Okay, so in this video, I wanted to talk to you about measurement on Facebook. And particularly, I want to look at how you can go about measuring the effectiveness of the content that you publish on like a Facebook business page. Now, the challenging part about measurement on Facebook is that it's really messy. So if you've ever managed a business page and you've tried to get content or you've tried to get data on the content that you have published, and you went looking for that data on Facebook, you might have found that there was a lot of different places that you could get information. And so what I wanted to do was to walk you through some of those different sources of data, like page or post level data within Facebook. And then I'll give you some of my suggestions on areas that you should probably focus. So first thing is I just want to give you a tour of all the different places that you can currently get Facebook data. And this changes a lot. At the time that I filmed this video, it's shortly after they sunsetted or decommissioned another tool called Facebook Analytics, which was actually, I think what they were trying to do was make like a Google Analytics equivalent for the Facebook ecosystem. Facebook Analytics had a lot of promise. It even had this cool like mobile application, and then out of nowhere they just ditched it. And at the same time, I'm also seeing them make some changes to things like Page Insights. There's a big focus now on something called Business Suite Manager, and it looks like they're putting a lot of data in there, but it's nowhere near as like developed as it should be. So let me walk you through all the different places, and we can kind of go from there. So what you're looking at right now is actually a Facebook page. It's a business page for one of the accounts that I have access to. I've had to blur out parts of the page because I don't want to disclose some of the information. And what you're looking at here is really just a post that this page had published. And you'll notice the first place you can get data is right within the feed of your business. You don't have to necessarily go into an insights tool. You can just go to the post. And if, again, you're an admin on the page, you'll see at the bottom here some quick stats like people reached, engagements, and you can also boost the post. Facebook is constantly trying to encourage you to pay more and boost your posts and stuff like that. So first place is you can get data for your post performance, like kind of right inside of the business page feed. And you'll notice you can actually click on these numbers and it's going to open up this pop-up that's going to give you more information, a little bit more granularity on things like how many people reached, how many comments or likes or shares were there, etc. There's also negative feedback. Can be actually really useful because this tells you how many people saw the post in the news feed and then clicked block or unfollow or something like that. So this is actually really useful information. But you can also click on this link here, and this is going to bring me to another tool called Creator Studio. Creator Studio is another place where you can create content and get insights on that content. So you can see here from this page, I can get some kind of more page level data. So there is a distinction that you should think about early, which is page level versus post level data. Page level data is going to give you more insight around how many followers do I have? How many people did my page overall reach this month? Post level data is going to be more granular. It'll give you like likes and engagement rates and people reached at the individual post level. And the page is kind of the summary of all that post level content and other things as well. So you should immediately, like when you want to think about measurement on Facebook, you want to think about, are you concerned about page level insights or post level? Post level, generally, you're focused more on trying to learn from the content you publish to create more engaging content going forward. Page level insights, you might use that data to inform your overall strategy and how you kind of reach different demographics and things like that. But you can see more page level data here. So my overall trend of people reached. So Creator Studio does have some data. It doesn't necessarily have the real deep insight on post level data. So there's probably other places that you're going to go to get that post level insight. The thing that is good about Creator Studio is that this is one place that you can actually get insights on stories that you publish. So if you do the stories feature, you can't get that data currently in Page Insights, which is another tool that Facebook has, but you can get it here. You can also get some really good video insights. If you are uploading videos, this is the place you're going to get it. So what I find that this is better at is not necessarily getting post level data or traditional kind of image and text posts, but it does give you some more granular data on things like video and Facebook stories and stuff like that. Another place you can get data from your Facebook page is something called Page Insights. So if you go to your page and then you click down here on Insights, it's going to bring you to this page. Now, this page is probably the oldest dashboard in Facebook for business level analytics. This honestly, it hasn't even changed that much. This is almost exactly what this tool looked like when they unveiled it, kind of almost like, I think like a decade ago. Now, the interesting thing is that this is one of the places where you can get, I think, the best data from Facebook right now, but we're going to come back to that later on. And that's particularly because of this data export feature. This data export allows you to export very, very comprehensive data that I can't seem to find anywhere else. Now, that being said, the interface for this tool is really awful because it gives you these different kind of modules here. And on the left side menu, I can kind of look at the data different ways. I can click on posts here and it's going to give me a report on my Facebook posts. This is probably the most embarrassing chart I've ever seen from Facebook because it doesn't really tell you anything. And also the data here is aggregated to Pacific Standard Time. So if you watched any of my lectures on Google Analytics, you know that when you set up a web property, you can tell Google what time zone is my web property, and all that engagement gets aggregated to that time zone. That doesn't happen here. And you could do it in the Facebook Analytics tool that they've now decommissioned, but you can't do it here. So all this data is aggregated to Pacific Standard Time, which makes no sense because I'm in a different part of the world. I'm actually in Southeast Asia where it's like 15 hours time zone difference. And most of my community is based in this region. So this is basically telling me that my main times of engagement are like between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m., which is definitely not the case. If I didn't know about this, then I'd read this data and be like, oh, okay, then I need to engage people at midnight or something, but that's just not the case. And again, Facebook's not really good at telling you this information. If I scroll down, this is where you can get the post level insights. The thing that just bothers me about, again, measurement on Facebook is that the UI here is really awful. You've got a lot of things condensed down. They're trying to shoehorn in these visualizations, which are hard to read. You can see this is giving you a breakdown of like organic versus paid. And there's also this hard push to just always be boosting posts. And it's another thing I am really annoyed about. Like there's a time and a place to be encouraging users, I think, to pay for advertising and things like that. But it's so prominent in every part of Facebook's tools that, again, just make me really upset because, you know, as an analyst, you just want to be able to sit down and read the data and focus on the data and not be thinking about like paid advertising. They're two different mindsets. So I'm somewhat annoyed that there's just this always this drive to be kind of paying and promoting your posts. So you can get this data from here, and there's different ways you can cut the data. So there's actually an important metric you can get is right from here, which is engagement rate. And I'm going to show you, you can get this from the post level data export, but this is a very important metric that I think you should always be using, which is your post level engagement rate, which is how many like engagements, likes, comments, shares did you get relative to the amount of people that you reached. And I'll show you how you calculate this, but this is a very important metric. The funny thing is it's hidden. You've got to come to Page Insights, click on posts, and it doesn't default to engagement rate. It defaults to this first one. So it's actually a little hard to find. So they've got all these other reports here that you can click through. So you can see like total views or views by, they call it section, but it's really like types of posts, or I guess the section on your Facebook page. You can change the time frame here. And again, they do say here it's all aggregated to Pacific Standard Time. At least they say it here. One thing you'll notice up here is that they're actually encouraging you to go click on this new insights tool. So if I click on this, what it does is it's actually going to take me over to something called Facebook Business Suite. And this is where they're clearly putting in all their effort right now. There's a much better UX, user experience and design. Things are a lot cleaner and I think a little bit easier to understand. But the problem is that the granularity or depth of data that you can find here is just nowhere near where it needs to be. So far we've covered a couple places where you can get data in Facebook. First is just inside your business page stream newsfeed. So getting data that's like baked right into the post itself. And you can click on this and it brings you to another place where you can get data called Creator Studio, which has some page level insights as well as deeper insights on things like stories and video. you've got the traditional and long-running Facebook page insights, but also they now have this new page insights section within the Facebook Business Suite area, which also has both page and post level data. Then you also have a couple of other areas where you can get data, but it's more specific to content that you boosted. So you've got this thing called Ad Center, and you get to Ad Center from your page. On the left side menu here, you'll see something called Ad Center here, and that will take you to this page where, again, you can still find some aggregate reach data. So what's the total reach of all the paid posts or paid advertisements? This won't just be promoted posts. This will also roll up like display ads or other types of ad units that you can buy on Facebook. So it isn't just post level engagement, but a lot of the advertising on Facebook is now post level engagement. And again, you can see another place where you can get posts, total reach, total engagements, etc. And then another area that you can get post level data and ads data is in the Business Suite on the section called Ads. This is different from the Ad Center, and don't ask me how it's different. It's just same data in a different place with some different metrics, some same metrics. And so again, you can see here, there is a run overview of all the different posts, and I can click on this to see more information. And then you have something else called the Facebook Ads Manager, or sometimes called a Campaign Manager. I don't even know if this is still really used, because you can still launch ads and manage your ads from the Business Suite interface or even the Ad Center. So this might be kind of a legacy tool. It still works from what I understand, and it's still a place where you can go in and download data. You won't necessarily get all the fancy looking charts of the other places, but you can still get data here. So that's 7 different places that you can get data within Facebook. Sometimes it's the same data, sometimes it's unique data. And you can also tell that there's a lot of overlap between these different sources. And I think the main problem I have with all this is that it's just really, really confusing. If you compare to another tool like Google Analytics, and I know that Google Analytics is kind of not entirely comparable because it's software that you can install on different properties or assets, whereas Facebook is an ecosystem itself. But I just really don't understand why they've made it so confusing, because I work with so many clients and customers that are just constantly confused. They have no idea what's the right place to be getting data. They might be pulling data from one tool, and then they'll talk to a colleague and they'll be like, oh no, I pulled it from another tool. And then aside from that kind of chaos, they also just don't know what metrics they should be focusing on. So now what I want to do is I want to show you some things that I think are more important to focus on, particularly when it comes to post level data analysis. So I'm going to go back to the Facebook Page Insights tool and the overview report. And again, they are really pushing that new interface. I hope that they don't remove this anytime soon. I have a feeling that at some point they are going to complete their transition so that all the data will probably come from Page Insights, from Business Suite Manager, and that day will probably come eventually. For now, I really hope that they do not do that before they port over all of the core reports here, or at least the raw data export over to the Facebook Business Suite tool. So what you want to look at here is this export tool feature here. You click on this, it allows you to export what I think is a very comprehensive data export file. It actually gives you much more data that's even available on the interface itself, which is good. It means you're getting access to a good amount of data that will give you more flexibility in what you do. And you'll notice that you can export a page level or post level report. These do export very, very different things. So we're going to show you both of them. Now, the thing is, they only allow you to go back 180 days. So you cannot export data more than that amount. So you could, download the data and put it in your own tool or store it somewhere if you want that kind of historical data. But after 180 days, you're on your own. You will not be able to get that back data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, give me this quarter, and I'm going to start with the page level export. You can choose a CSV if you want. Also, they actually give you the ability to create a custom layout. This just allows you to select, do you want fewer metrics and columns within the data file? I don't think you need to do this right now. So we're going to export the data here. Now I've kind of done a jump cut there, but that took a solid like 30 seconds. So it's not also very terribly fast. Like I wouldn't expect like another tool to take that long to export a file of just like 3 months of data. So you might find that it hangs for a little bit. It's not going to be terribly fast. Whenever you try to open these files, you're always going to get this alert. You can just say, yes, I want to open it anyway. To be honest, this alert has come up since I started my career in data analytics in 2011. So this error has been there the entire time. It's never gone away. But here is where you can get access to a broader range of data. There's just a lot more you can do with it. Now, again, we're looking at the page level insight document. So you're not going to see individual post level data. So what you can see here is day over day granularity. So you can see I downloaded 3 months of data. So I'm going to have roughly about 90 days worth of content here. You can see total likes. How's that changed over time? You've got things like daily new likes, unlikes. And for any of these metrics, they do have a definition underneath it. So on the second column, or the second row, I should say, they do have a definition that's helpful. Sometimes the definition doesn't help at all. And that's another point of frustration. Again, I compare a lot to Google Analytics, but Google Analytics has extensive documentation about metrics, how they're quantified, and how to understand them. Whereas you just don't have that kind of, there are some definitions, but they're just not technical enough, in the Facebook's documentation. So, but a lot of the time, these little definitions here will be helpful. There are a couple places where I find it's not. You'll be able to find like differences between like daily, weekly, or 28-day reach or impressions. And you can just kind of, I'm not going to go through everything here, but you can go through and find all the different things. They've got breakdowns of total reach versus organic versus paid. Organic reach is reach of people that you didn't pay to reach, and paid is reach based on paid ads and things like that. Viral reach has something to do with if someone follows your page and likes or engages with that piece of content, and someone in their network who doesn't know my business page sees it, then that is considered viral reach. So you've got all these different metrics. You've got impressions. So remember, there's reach and impressions. Impressions is more of a standard kind of staple metric in advertising, which just how many times was that piece of content exposed? It doesn't matter if it exposed me 10 times, it's still 10 impressions. But reach is that unique metric where it looks at individual Facebook accounts. So impressions is always going to be equal to or more than reach. It's often going to be much more than reach, but sometimes it can be valuable to have the impressions number. So you've got all these different kind of breakdowns, daily, weekly, monthly, and different cuts of things like reach, be it paid, organic, viral, etc. You can also look, like there's a ton of different worksheets here. So like source, this will tell you where did those likes come from? Was it search? Was it something else? They've got this other thing called total frequency distribution. This is I don't really use this that much, but what it does is it tells you kind of what was the frequency at which people saw a piece of content. So this is saying that like the frequency was quite high, if I'm reading this right. It looks like each column here is whether they saw the ad, the piece of content, I should say, once or twice. So this is saying that, there were 15 people on this day that saw my content 6 to 10 times, or 4 people on this day that saw the content 11 to 20, etc. Again, I'm not going to go through absolutely everything, but there are a lot of different reports in here, and you can make sense of it a lot of the time by reading these little definitions here that will help you understand or help explain the metric or the view of the data. Well, what I want to do now is I want to export the post level export, because this is to me a very valuable report. So we're going to go back, click export. I'm just going to set this to past month for now. And we're going to click post level export, click export data. So this is my post level export. And you can see that in this particular month, this Facebook page has only posted 4 times. It will give you this unique ID. It'll give you a link to that individual post. It will tell you, it'll give you the post message, the type, was it a photo or a link or something else? The exact date, again, it is aggregated to Pacific Standard Time. So this 2:30 a.m. is not when this was posted. This is when it was posted in like Seattle or something like that. So you might have to do some conversion here. This is where things get really interesting. So now you've got all these different breakdowns of the engagement with the post. So you've got like total reach. So this first post here, we reached 1,902 people. but then you can see total impressions. So interestingly enough, you can see that impressions is 1910 versus 1902. So impressions is not that much higher than the reach. And what does that tell me? It means that there is a high likelihood that most people only saw the content once. Because if everyone saw the content twice, the likelihood would be that we'd see impressions being double of this 1902 number. Now you can also see things like organic impressions versus paid impressions. So this particular post, we didn't boost it. So it's just organic reach, where we reached almost 2,000 people. This last post here, though, we did boost. And you can see that we reached over 8,000 people by paying for it. Engaged users. This is a very important metric. This is the number of people who engaged with the content in different ways, whether they liked, shared, or clicked anywhere on the post. This is an important metric because this is going to be the base for our engagement rate. To recap for a minute, I showed you on the Facebook page insights, particularly the post report, you can click this drop down here and click on engagement rate. You can see there we've got this 1% or 2% engagement rate. The way that you can calculate this yourself and get this data and get even maybe more decimal points here, so it's a little bit more granular, is you can come here and use this engaged users as the base and divide this into lifetime total reach. I'm going to do that now. So let's create a new column. I'm going to call this engagement rate. And all I have to do is take this number here, or this cell, and divide it into the adjacent column for reach. Click OK. I'm going to turn that into a percentage, maybe give myself a few decimal points to look at, and I'm going to pull this down. Now we've got an engagement rate. An engagement rate is extremely, extremely important here because an engagement rate will give you a view of a content performance relative to the amount of people I reached. And because there's so much focus on promoting posts in Facebook, your reach numbers are going to be drastically different. Sometimes you reached 1,900 people, sometimes you reached 500 people, other times you reached 9,000 people. And you can't compare a volume metric like total engagements for a post that had 2,000 people to a post that had 500 people. So this is where engagement rate is very, very, very important. And I highly recommend you use this. And you can get engagement rate in the dashboard. Again, it is on the page insights, the legacy dashboard under posts, and then you have to click this drop down here and get it here. Funnily enough, this metric is not available in the new dashboard. They only give you the volume numbers. So the only place you're going to get this number is from this interface here, or from downloading the data, which I highly recommend that you do, and running this calculation, which is essentially taking this column lifetime engaged users and dividing it into column I, which is lifetime total reach. So this is a very, very important metric. I can't emphasize this enough, because you just don't want to be comparing the engagement rates from a volume perspective for posts that had drastically different volumes of reach. There is another metric that is very, very useful, which you can use to calculate a click-through rate. And these together make two very important metrics, an engagement rate and a click-through rate. Engagement rate will tell you, was this post sticky? Was it engaging? Did people like it? Did they comment or share? Sometimes, though, an engagement rate is good when you're trying to build content, when you're trying to post content that you want people to engage with. But sometimes you are sharing posts where you want people to click on a link. That is the number one objective. A good example is if you're posting a post on Facebook that goes to an e-commerce store and you want people to buy something. Engagement rate might be a good number to look at, but what I really care about is how many people clicked on that post. And I shouldn't just be looking at volume of clicks, because if I have one post that had 500 people reached and another post with 10,000 people reached, I can't compare the number of clicks. So I want to use something called a click-through rate. Now, how do we calculate click-through rate? Right next to the new column we created here, let me highlight that in yellow. We have this other really confusingly named metric called lifetime matched audience targeting consumers on a post. What does that mean? Well, if you read the definition, it's the number of people who match the audience targeting that you set up, but that clicked anywhere in the post, i.e., It is the number of total unique people who were reached who clicked anywhere on the posts. That's all we need to know. Whereas this is how many people, unique people engaged on the post, like commented or shared. This is how many unique people clicked on the post. This we can use as a base for click-through rate. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click insert another column, call this click-through rate. And I use the exact same underlying idea here for the calculation. I'm going to divide this value here for column Q and divide it into lifetime total reach for the adjacent cell. Let me turn this into a percentage, give it some more decimal points here. And I can pull this down. So now you can see I've got, let me highlight this here. So now you can see I've got a post level engagement rate and a post level click-through rate. And these honestly are, I think, the two most important metrics when you're doing post level analytics in Facebook. If you're trying to track the performance of your content that you publish on Facebook, I'm not saying that these are the only metrics you should ever look at, but these are the two most important metrics that should probably always be part of your analysis. You don't always have to use both. If the objective of the content was more about just getting a response from people and to try and build your brand and get engagement, then you can use engagement rate. But if the post was really trying to drive people to click on a link to go somewhere else, like to go to a website or go to a store and buy something, then you want to use click-through rate. So know when you should use engagement rate versus click-through rate, but this is how you calculate it. And although engagement rate is supported in the Facebook Page Insights dashboard, click-through rate is not. So if I go back to this, I can only get total clicks. You'll notice if I show this report, I've selected post clicks here as from the dropdown, and you might be like saying, well, where are the clicks? Well, it's actually this first number here. This is the number of clicks. This is the number of engagements. I can't see it because they've got this terrible visualization with no tooltips or call outs or anything like that. It's really, really hard to find this stuff and figure out what exactly is happening here. But this 9 here, if we go back to my document, you can see that's the same post there, and you can see 9 clicks, which gives me, based on the reach, which is 1902, that's a click-through rate of 0.47%. Let me just go over to the new tool that they are now promoting a lot. This is my problem here. Number one, they do not give you any percentage or ratio metrics like engagement rate or click rate. So if I go to this content report here, I get the post level breakdown, but I only get volume metrics, total reach, total likes, total comments, total shares, etc. And I don't get, like, again, I just can't, you cannot be comparing posts that have fundamentally different levels of reach. It just does not work to compare a post that had 10,000 people reach to 500. So this is why engagement rates of engagement are really important for you to understand how this post did. The other thing that's a problem here is that the export tool here is not terribly useful. So if I export this data, let me open this up and show you what's in here. This is the export file for the new Page Insights tool. So what they do is you've got the each one of these is a post. So there's the caption, there's the date, there's the data. So it's giving me reach, likes, etc. I don't even know what's happening here. There's some kind of error. This tool has been around for a bit. This is not like they just rolled this out yesterday. And honestly, it feels like they haven't really finished building it yet. Maybe by the time you watch this, it'll be better, but it's really astonishing to me, the stuff that I see here. But here's the problem. Okay, there is no engagement rate on this tool. So you might say, well, I can just take likes and reactions here and divide it into reach. That doesn't work. It doesn't work as well as the other metric, because in the other data export file, you have this thing called engaged users. It's like reach, but it's for engagement. So it will tell you what is the total number of people that engaged, because, you know, one person could have liked the post, another person could have liked, shared, and commented 5 times, and that would still count as 2 engaged users. But using this report, if you had one person that just liked versus one person who liked and commented 5 times, you've now got 7 engagements. You've got 2 likes and 5 comments. I believe you can only like or give it 1 reaction. So this will be 1 reaction to 1 person, but then you're ignoring clicks and comments and shares, which can happen multiple times. So this to me does not give you the ability to calculate a true engagement rate. You need a base number, which is people engaged, not the actual engagements themselves. So this is the way that I recommend that you that you get that, host level data that you can analyze. And this is the way that I recommend that you calculate things like engagement rate and click-through rate, which again, I think are the two most important metrics here. And what I highly recommend is that you make it a habit of exporting this data from Facebook and storing it somewhere so you can have a kind of historical running summary of this data. One, because remember, they only store it for 180 days. So if you want to compare to a year ago, you're going to need to store this somewhere. And two, because I honestly don't know how much longer this tool is going to be around. And it'll be really bad for marketers if they sunset this tool without carrying over the comprehensiveness of this export data feature here, because this tool just does not cut it. This just gives you the icing on the cake. And if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of optimizing your content, you need much more granular data. You need to have access to data that is this granular. Now, I wish that Facebook did have one tool that didn't force you to have to get the data out of the platform. I don't even bother with any of these tools. I just export the data and I do all my analysis either in Excel or Data Studio or in another tool that I plug it into. I just don't waste my time with it because the tools don't afford nearly enough flexibility for you to do meaningful analysis. So main takeaway here is Facebook has a ton of tools that are really, really confusing to use. But there is one area that I highly recommend that you focus on, which is actually exporting the data from the legacy Page Insights tool, which is still around. So just ignore, like, you can use this tool, but don't be overly enticed by this push to get you into the new Insights tool. I still recommend that you use this one, and specifically on the overview report here, the data export, which can be done at a post or page level granularity. So I hope this was a useful lecture, and thanks again for watching.